Alive and Well STL is a presentation of the St. Louis Regional Health Commission with the first decade review of health status report to build a healthier St. Louis. And RareGem Productions. Power up with the positive. Learn more at OneRareGem.com. That's OneRaregem.com.
Support for Alive and Well STL comes from Beyond Housing. Helps entire communities become better places to live. Learn more at beyondhousing.org.
The Regional Health Commission works in partnership with regional health sector advocates and stakeholders to improve healthcare access, reduce health disparities, and improve health outcomes for the uninsured and the underinsured in St. Louis City and County.
Alive and Well STL with Bethany Johnson-Javios, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network.
So pleased to be continuing our conversation today about how we become alive and well in STL, all during a time when our community is coming together to find a way to affect positive change and to begin the healing process.
Hope is contagious. One of the key things that I think we must do, we must stop being judgmental. We have to accept people where they are. We have to seek the truth and just recognize that everybody is where they are because of something that has happened.
I just remember our neighborhood, that people cared about each other, people checked on each other, people inquired how each other were doing. And I remember those days, everybody in the neighborhood would come out to shovel the street. This was a time when people just came out of their house, socialized, talked, and worked together to do something collectively for the common good of the neighborhood and for each other.
Today, Rosetta and Joe will be sharing with us some ideas about how we as individuals and as community can work together to become alive and well. We'll be right back.
What does it mean to you to be alive and well in St. Louis? We want to hear your story. Tell us what it means to you personally, what you need to achieve it, how our program may have helped, or even some of your best recommendations for the rest of us. You can share it on the message box at 314-333-8369. You can send an email to info@oneraregem.com. You can even post it on Facebook at ONERGP or on the Hallelujah 1600 page as well. We'll share your message with our community to help make it possible for everyone to thrive. It's great to be alive. Be alive and Well STL. 10 a.m. Mondays on Hallelujah 1600. RareGem Productions proudly presenting the positive.
Greetings, St. Louis. Thank you again for joining us today. This is Bethany Johnson, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network and host of Alive and Well STL, sponsored by the St. Louis Regional Health Commission. Today, we will bring you some familiar voices you have heard before on the show. I will be speaking with Rosetta Keaton, patient advocate for the St. Louis Regional Health Commission, and Joe Yancey, chair of the Health Commission's Community Advisory Board and executive director of Places for People. Both have spent their lives helping people to become alive and well, something we strive for as a community, but also recognize that we have work to do to get there. Today, Rosetta and Joe will be sharing with us some ideas about how we as individuals and as community can work together to become alive and well. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you, Bethany.
Thank you.
First, Rosetta and Joe, please tell the audience, as your introduction, about a time you were part of a community or a group that felt alive and well to you.
I think the group that comes to mind most often to me, and the group that makes me still smile all the time, is a breast cancer support group that I facilitate. I've been blessed not to have breast cancer, but I have been a part of a breast cancer support group for probably about 20 years. And this group to me is a perfect example of being alive and well. They're not physically completely whole because they've had bouts with cancer, but they're so positive and they give you such an uplifting feeling, and they listen to each other. And they share empathy and understanding and acceptance. And when you leave there, you feel so good. You feel like I can go on. I can conquer the world. And I can even come back again next month. And if I'm falling down, somebody will hear me and understand and support me. That one group to me is the epitome of being alive and well.
And it shows that hope can be contagious.
Hope is contagious.
So, Joe, what's the group that you think about most in your work or in your life that makes you feel alive and well?
Well, Bethany, when I thought about this, I got to go back a little bit. And it goes back to, frankly, my adolescence and growing up in Chicago on the South Side in the neighborhood of Chatham. And I remember this not because it's the only time I have had that feeling, but because it is the really last time that I can remember when I think something that is so important to the topic we're talking about that I can remember being part of. And that was when communities were interdependent as opposed to independent. And I just remember our neighborhood, that people cared about each other, people checked on each other, people inquired how each other were doing. Specifically in Chicago, sometimes we get really big snowstorms. And I can remember a couple of times where we had maybe 12, 13, 14 inches of snow. And I remember those days, everybody in the neighborhood would come out to shovel the street. Now, there were plows in Chicago that would shovel those streets eventually. But this was a time when people just came out of their house, socialized, talked, and worked together to do something collectively for the common good of the neighborhood and for each other. And so I'm going to kind of return to this whole concept of interdependence versus independence. I think that's when I felt the most alive and well.
So your honest opinion, do you think that St. Louis can have that same kind of a visual here? We had the 12 to 13 inches of snow last year. Can we get back to that place that you envision and that brings you hope?
That's the goal.
Rosetta, I believe that it is very possible. I think that what we have to be able to do is to be able to show the value of being able to see ourselves in that state, as opposed to kind of the rugged individualism that really is the priority right now. So I think it's possible. I think it's going to be a long haul, and I think it's going to take a lot of work, but that's what this is about. This is a movement. Movements aren't easy.
Absolutely. Rosetta, you mentioned the support that people in the breast cancer survivor group provide to one another. And I know that in your work as a patient advocate, your support for patients really makes a huge difference, a world of difference for them. How can we provide that same kind of support in our own communities?
One of the key things that I think we must do, we must stop being judgmental. We have to accept people where they are. We have to seek the truth and just recognize that everybody is where they are because of something that has happened. And I think stop being judgmental is so important to me, because when I work with people, I can't afford to be judgmental. And I have to seek the truth always. My mentor taught me that there were 3 sides to every story: my side, their side, and the truth.
Yep.
And somewhere down the middle, if we listen well enough, we'll get to the truth. And I think you can't be judgmental. That is so key to me. As the saying goes, you can't judge the book by the cover. You know, what's inside is what is going to matter, really, really matter. I don't know why I'm stuck on not being judgmental today. I think if we're going to be alive and well, we must really be non-judgmental and be able to offer what we have, whatever that is, because each of us have something to offer to our fellow man, to whomever our brother or sister is. We have to be able to offer it and offer where we can help, to offer to help. That's what I think will help us get on the road to being whole and have this sense of well-being that we want to get.
You know, Joe, what are some ways that you think about helping us to understand how to open up our hearts again, to be able to speak truthfully and to listen for truth instead of listening for what we assume with people? Are there some ways that we can do that, particularly when the hurt has been deep and the wounds have been severe and the emotions run high as they are right now in our community? What do we do about that?
Well, I think some very simple things we can do, Bethany, and all of us can do this, are simply acknowledging the existence of others. We can do that by just saying hello or some other greeting. Inquiring about their well-being. How are you? how things going for you, being available and making that availability known. You mentioned listening. One of the things that we as a society do not do is we do not listen. Even when we think we're listening, we're thinking of what we're going to say back. We do not listen well. The reality is that I think my health and well-being and my family's health and well-being is dependent on the well-being of the people around me, in my community, in my neighborhood, where I work, and what have you. Again, the whole concept of interdependence versus independence.
I'm really struck by that because I know with myself that my happy place is in my local church with my family. And I found the older that I'm getting that my identity is really made up of the conversations, the places, and the people that are in my life more than where I went to school and what I did and my high school and all those things. To me, it's really superficial. I really am made up and a product of all of my experiences, which I hear you both reflecting today. So are there particular ways that as we go about opening our heart to others, part of our challenge is that perhaps we're not open to our own healing? Do you have any thoughts about how we can take care of ourselves as we're taking care of others in this work?
I do. I think that a lot of life is very busy. It is extremely hectic for many of us, but there are some very simple things that we can do. I think the whole concept of breathing. We as human beings nowadays, if we paid attention to it, we will realize that we really don't breathe well. Frankly, when something happens or we are feeling stressed, just the simple act of taking some deep breaths, closing our eyes, can be extremely beneficial. Meditation and other kinds of things like that we have gone away from, but clearly are ways that we can help ourselves to control the impact of stress in our lives. And the reality is that's going to happen. No doubt about it. So there are some simple things I think we can do. And being aware of our surroundings and being aware of each other.
This one may not be so simple to do, but it's essential. For me, I learned that it was so very, very important to learn to forgive myself for whatever made me feel guilty. Say I'm sorry if necessary, but forgive myself. That's not easy. It's not always easy to forgive yourself. But I think along with breathing, which I have a horrible time with, and learning to forgive yourself, I think we can become healthier.
I think these are great prescriptions that we're speaking about today. Rosetta and Joe, you are both serving as leaders of the Health Commission and the Alive and Well movement. And we've been very intentional about that word movement. Why is this movement so important to you at this time in our history?
It's important to me because my perception and my observation of what's going on in my world around me, which is huge and broad, is that we are really a hurting people and we're grieving a lot. We're grieving for not just the loss of our young ones that we see leaving us every day, not just with the Ferguson episode, but also with the other events that we see taking place. We're grieving those, but we're also grieving some other things. We're grieving loss of good times. How often do I hear people say, boy, I wish we could go back to when? And the camaraderie, as Joe talked about, in the community and the togetherness. I think we're actually grieving those things. And we don't recognize that we're really grieving that. We miss it. It's not a part of who we are anymore. And it helps to make us be alive and well. We also have got to get back a hope. We got to start thinking that, yes, it can happen. Yes, it will be. There is hope. When we start to feel that hope and are able to not forget it, but go through the grieving process and then grow. Mm-hmm. We have to do that. We have to do that. And unless we can do that we won't get this sense of well-being, because it's so much out here that we are missing in our hearts and in our state of being that's keeping us from being alive and well. I witness it every day. I may not can put it all into words, and it may be different for a lot of people, but we've got to stop grieving and start moving on with our lives.
I'm going to answer that question in the context of being a healthcare provider. And this is very personal, but I personally am really tired, honestly, of people presenting themselves for assistance and help at our shop who are broken, who have been hurt, and nothing's been done. You know, the adverse childhood experience, the ACE study, which we have looked at pretty extensively, shows that a real correlation between things that happen in childhood, experiences that children may have, and then the onset of chronic health conditions, be they emotional or physical, later in life. And that phenomena is one that doesn't stop when one becomes an adult. All of us, in all of our lives, things are going to happen to us. And how we address those, how we cope with those, really determines how our health is going to be in the long run. So in terms of being alive and well, we have to be cognizant of those things that happen to us and how they impact our health. In some pockets of our community, though this occurs to everyone, just being a human being, you are exposed to this potentiality. But there are pockets in our community where this has become normalized, that it is just part of everyday life. And there is a dearth of unawareness of how that coping skills that we utilize to deal with these, whether they be healthy or unhealthy, what impact that has on us being alive and well. And so this movement to me is so important because I want that connection to get out there. I want us to understand really how that affects all of us.
As we think about wrapping up this show, I want to ask both of you to do something off script. I want you to think about the communities, Joe, that you described that are at a place of acceptance, that pain and hurt and anger, that is the reality of where they're going to be and where they live. And Rosetta, for you, for those communities and for individuals who are stuck in a grieving process, can't get to growth. Speak directly into the mic as if you were talking to one of your sons or your daughters or in the community. What advice do you have for folks who are, quite frankly, stuck?
Speaking to my family, and my family is broad. It's just not those that are blood. My family is very broad. I love a lot of people. First of all, I have to say my religious beliefs. I have a problem with religion, but I am Christian. But my belief, and I believe everybody needs to have a belief. Mine happens to be my belief in Jesus as my Savior. So I would recommend that, of course, to everybody as a means of starting to reconcile your heart. But everybody needs to believe in something or somebody. And I say to people who are grieving, whatever that grief, the camaraderie, the lost love, the aches and pains and hurt that are being experienced, find a belief in something or some entity greater than themselves. And if you can't do anything but look up and make a next step, one step at a time, toward whatever it is that you wish to have happen for you. I am a product of a hard life, very poor, loving parents, thank God. But as an adult having to make it on my own, I had to constantly keep hope. Even when I didn't feel hope, I had to say hope. And because of my belief in something bigger than me, I was able to continue to move, sometimes a half a step at a time. until I'm able to get to where I can exhale, really exhale for that moment. And everybody must know, and I would say to my daughter, that I do say to my daughter all the time, life is a continuous journey, and it's not over until it's over. And so, roads are high, roads are low, bumpy, so on and so forth. But it's your journey, and you have to stay on it, and you have to make it the best way that you can.
Well, I think that a couple of things. One is that I would tell my son or daughter living in that situation that stress is a part of life. It is going to be with us. But again, how we cope with that is extremely important. The two main things are really quite simple, but hard to accomplish. So when we think about prevention, and I think in many ways that's what we're talking about, there are really two elements to that. That's increasing the protective factors and reducing the risk factors. And part of increasing the protective factors are, first off, having just an awareness of how stress or things that happen to us can impact our health over the long term. I don't think that that is widely known. Secondly, again, the resiliency, which is an important protective factor, requires connection with other people, having support systems that one can call on, whether they be neighbors, family, friends, whatever. And so that awareness, I think, prompts action on the part of to start to think about really the interdependency that we all share. Finally, the other thing that we know, or one of the other things we know, is that people need to have access to resources. And so I am hopeful that this movement will, amongst other things, have a very specific task of inventorying resources in our community. Where are the disparities in terms of those resources? And having a way and a plan to try to fill those gaps and those holes. So at the end of the day, to me, this is really about increasing protective factors and decreasing risk factors, and doing that within the context of how things happen to us and how we address or respond to those things that happen to us have a real impact overall in terms of our health and well-being. So to get to alive and well, those are things specifically we will need to be taking part in as part of this movement.
Yeah, make a decision to activate. Absolutely. Is there anything else as we wrap up that you want to say to listeners that you haven't been able to share yet?
Well, for one thing, for a long time, we've been telling folks, you need to eat healthier, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do these things. And we are surprised when they don't happen, when people don't take that on. And I think a big part of that is that people really don't understand the connection between things that happen as a normal part of life and how we respond to those. I think that awareness in and of itself will be huge and will make a difference. So then when we start to talk about eating healthier or other things that we know are going to be good for our health and well-being, people can have something to relate to that. Mm-hmm. And right now, I think that's a big void.
And the only thing that I could add to everything that Joe has said so well is to ask the communities that are listening, come on, y'all. Let's get on board to become alive and well.
Amen. I don't even know what to say after that. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Alive and Well STL. We look forward to speaking with you again next week. For more information about today's program and to become involved in Alive and Well STL, please visit us online at aliveandwellstl.com. See you next week. Thanks for listening.
Alive and Well STL. Thank you for joining us today. For resources available, go to aliveandwellstl.com. If you have more questions about the program, need help, or want to connect, please call the message box at 314-333-8369. The Regional Health Commission with Chief Executive Officer Robert Friend Jr. committed to providing a detailed review of change over the past decade and 14 leading health indicators for the city and county of St. Louis. The first decade review of health status report, an update to building a healthier St. Louis. Discover the narrative, the data, and celebrate the progress already made to improve healthcare access and reduce health disparities in our region. Learn more at stlrhc.org. Alive and Well STL is another positive production of RareGem Productions. Thanks for listening.